Good morning, dear distinguished speakers and all audiences. Welcome to our session today. This is session 1C. Um, I would like to welcome my speakers soon, but first of all, I must say that we are all passing very tough days. Um, 2020 was really a hard year, and it was hard for all of us, and it's still being hard. 1.3 million people already died due to pandemic, and it was not only an impact on the health, but also there was a big impact on the economy as well so far. As per the latest reports of IMF, projected global growth for year-end is now estimated around -5% globally. Unemployment rates, again, from their latest report in October, says that in the advanced economies, it was around 7.3%. So it was really a hard year for all of us. But it was not only about pandemic. In all the statistics, we see that natural disasters are rising year on year as well. We heard a lot about hurricanes, earthquakes, floods everywhere. So I must say that we really try to survive. And this is not only for companies maybe, but also for persons, for each of us. And why I really must say that this is why we have chosen this topic. We will gonna talk about resilience, link with standards during this crisis I already mentioned. So thank you for being us again. Welcome on board. I must first thank to my all distinguished speakers. Thank you for being us today. Let me introduce them very quickly. I will start with Mr. Scott Stidman. Welcome, Scott. I know it's too early in UK. Thank you for being us in this session today. Scott is an executive director of BSI. He is group director of standards as well. Today he is representing also ISO. An engineer by background, Scott spent 7 years as an academic at Cambridge University before moving to industry, working on infrastructure projects in the UK and around the world. He joined BSI in 2012, and as mentioned, he is Vice President for International Standards Organization since 2017 on policy. He is a former Vice President of the Royal Academy of Engineering and the Institution of Civil Engineers. He was appointed CB in 2010. So welcome, Scott, and thank you so much for being us today. My other speaker is Professor Dr. Adem ŞAHİN. He is the president of TSE, graduated from Hacettepe University, Faculty of Social and Administrative Sciences, Business Administration program. He completed his master's and PhD degrees of economics in Istanbul University. Following that, he served as the duty undersecretary in the Ministry of Industry and Trade and carried out his duty as the undersecretary in between 2000 and 2007. Mr. ŞAHİN began his new duty in the Union of Chambers and Commodity Exchange Economy and Technology University, Faculty of Economics and Administrative Sciences, Department of Economics as lecturer in 2007, where he has received professor title in 2009 there. Between 2008 and 2015, he worked as the Secretary General in the same university and conducted Vice Rector and Acting Rector duties in 2014-2015. Later on, he became the Rector in the same university. Welcome to our session, Mr. ŞAHİN, and thank you so much for being with us today. And my other speaker, our very important speaker, is Mr. Tatsuya KUMAZAWA. Welcome, Kumazawa-san. Thank you for being us again. He is representing the industry today. Kumazawa-san is graduated from the University of Utah, Department of International Relations, Political Science in 2000. He started his professional career in 2001 at Matsushita Electric Works Limited Company, which is also a Panasonic corporation. Tatsuya KUMAZAWA worked in different companies and units affiliated with Panasonic for 19 years, being started his duty as the Panasonic Life Solutions Turkey Sales and Marketing Executive Board member in April 2017. Now he's carrying out his duties as the company's chairman since March 2018. Welcome, my distinguished speakers again, and let me start asking the first questions about resilience, because as said before, we are passing very, very hard days, and everybody, without any exception, is affected, all these changes around us. So we try to learn more and more resilient. And this is the new terminology, therefore we should define first. So shall I start with Scott, please? Scott, can you please explain us the meaning of resilience in standards world?
Well, thank you and good day, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here. Özlem, it's a very interesting question, and I think it has two dimensions, really. Many in industry think of standards as technical specifications, but in the quality world, professionals know very well that standards support better business processes and increasingly shape the principles of better corporate governance, of culture and resilience, the ability of an organization to anticipate, to prepare, to respond, to adapt to disruptions, to survive and prosper. So fundamentally, I see standards as knowledge of best practice to be used by businesses to achieve the outcomes that they want. Standards makers in our ISO and BSI committees are committed to the role of standards as tools for business transformation, and as such, they will embed in those standards as they go through that process all the practices that will lead to higher resilience, because they're improving the way that businesses do practice. So it's inherent in the process of making standards that the standards will produce a more resilient company where companies use the standards. And you can see that specifically in standards like the Great Quality Management Standard, risk management, ISO 31000, business continuity, very important in the pandemic, 22301, occupational health and safety, 45,001 companies that use these standards are safer companies. All of these standards help to make organizations more resilient. So I think that international business standards today automatically incorporate the concept of resilience because they're aimed at improving performance. But then secondly, I think to become resilient, organizations need to take a holistic view of the health and success of their organization and plan for the long term. And there are special standards on this that explain the concept of organizational resilience. So you might look at ISO's standard on organizational resilience, which I think is 22316, ISO 22316, and that's a very key role in this. Or you might think about the great ISO 27001, information security. Great standards here. I could go on, Özlem, but that's enough.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, that will be my next question. Actually, you already mentioned you said there is a standard already developed for the purpose of resilience. So is this a real standard or a framework or guideline referring to the other standards you already mentioned?
Yeah, it's a framework for organizational resilience, for building a system into your company that will address changing environments and how to do that. And we had a lot of success during the pandemic of deploying standards to support businesses, but we may come on to talk about that in a minute.
Okay, all right, great. So I would like to turn to Mr. Şahin now. How does TSE adopt these international standards, Mr. Şahin? So is there any cultural differences you consider whenever you develop any local standard here?
Thank you very much for being here today. I would like to say hi to everybody. It is a proud for me, it's a pride for me to be together with some distinguished speakers today. As you know, Turkish Standards Institute Turkish Standards Institute, which is abbreviated as TSE. We apply the standards that are defined by the international communities, and they constitute an important resource of reference for us. And in the period that we are going through, we have seen that the conditions are changing, and the change is always in progress, and a lot of effects are experienced in various industries in Turkey. We have understood that the classic standards that is applied by the international community is very important and play a key role in our industrial needs. We are answering the needs of the communities in the shortest way possible, and we constitute a trust in the markets. We owe our standards this trust. And security, safety, durability, and similar standards are helping us in terms of adapting the changing conditions of our market. And we accept this as our key factor, and we adapt international standards our country and enterprises that are active in our country. Of course, we have a lot of factors that are specific to our culture, but since the international standards are applicable to all of these, these standards make our lives easier, and most of the time we are able to meet at a common ground for all of us. So safety, security, organizational resilience, for example, are all the same in the whole world. Therefore, maybe we have to say that in times of crisis, the standards are playing a key role, a critical role, only if you can make them flexible and you are able to adapt them. If you fulfill these conditions, the standards will grant you a non-stop process for all your endeavors. That's why they are very important, and therefore we actively apply them, and therefore we actively perform a lot of activities in order to fulfill all the international standards. This is our institution policy as TSE. I think this will be my answer.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yes, that was pretty much clear. And as you said, crisis is for all of us everywhere, and surviving is the same for all of us everywhere. Not depends on where we are or what we are doing, but we all try to be more resilient. So the definition of resilience is the same for all of us in the world. So I am turning to Kumazawa-san. Kumazawa-san, we know that total quality management is spread out from Japan. And we know that you are a Japan company operating in Turkey here. How do you describe resilience in your company? Which standards, models, or maybe systems you are using for resilience?
Hi, good morning, Özlem-san. Thank you very much for everybody. Hi, how are you? I'm very much glad to be here today. To answer your question, first of all, I would like to mention for TQM. TQM is a management framework to build long-term success. And I think it's a keyword for this TQM is continuous improvement and also process improvement. So from this point of view, this TQM concept is very close to, similar to organizational resilience. And then I define that resilience itself as a combination of risk management and BCP. So from this point of view, that as a Panasonic, we have, of course, annual business plan. And then not only for annual business plan, we have 2030 business plan. So looking into SDG goals, that we think that how the Panasonic should be in 2030. And then we are going to backcast it and then trying to make what is a target and a goal over 2021. So this is our basic of the thinking. And in order to make this kind of annual plan, base is that we have the Panasonic basic business philosophy. So this is quite important. And also company tree. And also we have 7 principles. So this is our base of our organization's philosophy itself. So on top of this one, we are managing our business. Then also looking into those Panasonic Corporation's basic philosophy as a local initiative in Panasonic Life Solution Turkey, we also have own policies. Then based on this one, we are managing. And also that standards, what we are using now here is thanks to TSE support, we have a quality management system and also environmental management system, occupational health and safety, and then information securities. We have this kind of certificate. And also this is the TSE certificate recently we got. Unfortunately, under this COVID-19 situations, that we got the safe production certificate COVID-19 from TSE. So this the standard is quite helpful for us because such a new thing is happening, and in order to communicate with the headquarters, what kind of level of COVID-19 standards we need to do. Headquarters also doesn't know what to do, but in order to communicate to our headquarters to Japan, this TSE certificate of safe production for COVID-19, this helps the communications that we are in the very, how can I say, secured level of COVID-19 countermeasures. So from this point of view, I would like to appreciate about the TSE for this certificate.
Very good, very good. Thank you, and congratulations about this achievement as well. As this is not only for your headquarters, but also for everybody who is in your interested parties. Actually, I'm sure they will be very much happy to hear that you already have this certificate, which is a sign of good implementation of these protections. So we talked about this is resilience is not only about risk management, and Kumazawa-san already mentioned we combine this with BCM. So I would like to turn to Scott again. Scott, how does the new generation standards support this idea? Because it is not only about risk mitigation now, but maybe thinking about opportunities as well. How does the new standards, new generation standards, support resilience in this?
Yes, absolutely. Very good question. I'm very interested to hear, Kumazawa-san, your explanation of Panasonic's excellent work in using the standards so effectively. For me, using standards is where the benefit comes. It's not about meeting standards. Good companies want to go beyond. They want to push themselves and to achieve that advantage. So I think there are 2 dimensions to this question also about new generation standards. The first for me is the idea that there is a new generation of business standards emerging that are quite different from the great management system standards that we have been talking about this morning. I've called this a 3rd generation of standards, and they're all about shaping the principles of modern business practice. They're about people, they're about behaviors, and nothing is more important in coping with this pandemic in a work environment than people's behavior. One of my favorites of this new generation is a standard, a BSI standard called PAS 3000 on smart working. That's all about people in your workplace and how you must respect their situation, their family, their environment. It's a very, very elegant standard to try and improve behaviors in the workplace. But I think that the other good example I would suggest worth looking at is ISO 26000 guidance on social responsibility. you can tell a new generation standard because it will say something like, this is not suitable for certification. It's about principles, it's about guidance, it's to help chief executives rather than auditors, if you like. These standards are about opportunities for business to learn how to be better organizations, how to become more resilient through better behaviors. And these new generation standards are different from the management systems, and they sit beside management systems. They have a different sort of value, and they bring different benefits. They're really structured for CEOs and business leaders to know what good looks like. The second dimension, I think, of new standard, new generation standards is the new practices that we are bringing in. Because to be resilient, you have to react rapidly and to be agile. And we know that many of our traditional processes, our main international standards processes, take time. And that's because there are many countries involved, many experts, many stakeholders. But in the pandemic, we've had to be much more agile. And we have been working on a new process that we call FLEX, which is an innovative standards process to support the development of new technologies and services in an iterative way, so step by step. And we can use that with industry and government when they need the rapid development of a new consensus, as you described, Kumazawa-san, in Turkey on safe working practice. So we call it a BSI Flex, and it's a fast pace approach, a bit like software development, where we create a consensus within a couple of weeks, we improve it, we issue it, we use it in industry, we get feedback, we iterate again. And we do that in a very cyclical way. And we use that during the pandemic to create a safe working guidelines Flex standard in a matter of a few weeks. And then we revised it twice within a couple of months. So that was really exciting and very successful. And it proves that new generation standards can respond to any situation. So I think that because we followed a process with the Flex standard, we can use that as a basis for new international standards to be used all over the world. I think these kind of deliverables underpin resilience by supporting the adoption of new technologies and alternatives to regulations. So I think it's a very exciting time for new generation standards to support business and industry in a crisis time like the pandemic this year.
Well, very good point, Scott. Actually, I must say I am impressed really, because whenever we talk about the standards supporting each other, we always think about management system standards, but actually life is also changing. It's not only regulating or adjusting the processes, but people are always involved, and we should definitely change people mindsets, change the behaviors, which is also linked with the values. Sorry, please.
Yeah, this is the most important part of a new generation for me. I think the first generation was all about products and services, specifications, technical standards, are very, very important, of course. And then the second generation, total quality management, as Kumazawa-san says, the management systems, auditing processes, and the new generation is about people and behavior. And that's so important for chief executives today.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And as you already said, people are not standalone things. They should be combined with ethics, all the principles and everything. Thank you so much. Well, that was really good point. Mr. Şahin, can you please, starting from that discussion here, with these new generation standards as well as the existing management systems concentrated on the opportunities as well. Can you please tell us more how you do handle this in TSE?
Evet. Şimdi
Well,
TSE'nin Scott'ın da üzere.
Well, as Mr. Stidman mentioned,
IQ yönetim, yani dünyada standart otoritelerin
there's a connection
biz
problem.
üyesi.
Well,
Dolayısıyla
TSE is a member of all the internationally recognized authorities about these global standards.
Ayrılmaz bir parçası.
All the studies of in the world, all the endeavors, all the efforts that are paid into this topic in the world is our indispensable part that we see ourselves to be within. And it is a very challenging process, of course, in all the endeavors to create more standards in accordance with the changing environments. No, there is a connection problem.
Öne çıkan husus doğal afetler, salgın
Well,
hastalıklar, iklim değişikliği,
for example,
yoğun
the
kentleşme,
challenges that we may experience quite abruptly can be exemplified as the climate change, the natural
bu yeni
disasters, the
şartlar altında yapılacak
pandemics, the
faaliyetlerin
earthquakes, and so on. And all the standards may need to take these kind of challenges into consideration in a very short period of time. So we have to adapt ourselves to the abruptly changing situations in the world, and all the changes in the standards
ortaya konulmaya çalışılıyor. Zaten böyle bir çalışmayı yaptığınız
should
zaman
be reflected to our international standards, and in order to do this adaptation we have to conduct some internationally recognized studies that actually include cooperation from international environments.
diye bir standart. Mesela biz bu dönemde bu standarttan
For
oldukça
example,
yüksek seviyede yararlandık.
we have benefited from these changing standards in the international communities as TSE.
Hepsini bir şekilde kendi çalışmalarımızda değerlendirmek durumunda
We
kaldık.
have evaluated these kind of international standards that have adapted to the recent changes in the world.
Referans
No,
almak
there is a
suretiyle
connection problem. I really have a hard time in hearing Mr. ŞAHİN.
Hizmet kesimi için,
For the
okullar için,
industry, for the schools,
için,
for the residents, for the university campuses, for the shopping malls, and so on. The changing standards in the world have been adapted by our institution in Turkey as well. So we have to do our best in order to keep up with these changes in these challenging times.
oluşturduk. Bugün bütün
And we
sanayinin
did
tüm kesimleri
our best to meet our institutions, our industries, our enterprises with the newly updated standards in Turkey.
bilmek lazım. Eğer siz referans kabul edebileceğiniz bir ana standarttan haberdarsanız, beklenmeyen durumlar
In this context, your institution needs to be aware of
hızlı
the changes in the international communities, and you have to adapt your national institution to these international changes. Only when you do that, you will be able to keep up with the recent changes, the most recent changes in your world, in the world that we live in, and this is the only way that we can adapt our country to the world.
Right. Well, I should confess that certification. Sorry, I hear my voice, by the way. It is really, I must confess that certification sector is really hard as well, because whatever you develop has to be just on time, and also has to be a best practice, means that something that you should take as a model, so shall be always updated, and shall be always the best in the market. So even when we pass through those days, every day there is something new coming in. It's not easy to keep it up to date. As Scott already mentioned, some of the practices already revised in 1 monthly period even. This is a really very hard sector, but definitely crucial to take a reference point to understand how good we are, or how much more we have to go. Kumazawa-san, back to you again, please. How do you experience these new generation standards in your world, in your practice? Are you focused more on risk mitigation in your company? You already mentioned about BCM, but I would like to ask about more opportunities. How it's going on? I mean, what is the balance in the way of you do the business between risk mitigation and finding the new opportunities in the market?
Yeah, thank you very much. What Scott-san mentioned is quite interesting to me, actually. For the third generations of the standard, they focus on the people. This is quite interesting to me and also the Panasonic, because as you can see, my company name is Panasonic Life Solutions. So
yeah.
we have a mission to do the life solutions. And then we have like a human-oriented business. This is our new opportunities. As Scott-san also mentions that we are manufacturers, so of course we are going to produce the products itself. However, this business opportunities, if we are focusing only in the products, there's a limitation, there's a competitions. So what we can do, this is also looking into our 7 principles. The first articles of the 7 principle is contribution to societies. So in order to contribute to the society, not only for the products, but we need to contribute to the people, local people. For example, what we are working here in Turkey, how we are going to contribute to the people in Turkey. So I think this is our mission as a Panasonic Life Solutions company. So it's quite interesting ideas that the third generations of standards should focus on people. I think this is quite interesting to me. And also risk opportunities, of course, as a manufacturers and also private company, most of the companies doing the same, I think, try to minimize the risk, maximizing opportunities. So as a manufacturer, what we are doing here is when I compare to market in Japan, market Japan is it's stable. However, Turkey market in Turkey is more fluctuating. So that's why in order to be stable, we are trying to expand export business. And also to mitigate about the risk of inflation, we are trying to make automations in our production side. So this is very basic action as a manufacturers. But in order to maximize opportunities, I think from now on we have to focus on the people. This is quite.
Right.
This is what we are looking at.
Perfect. Right. Thank you. I totally agree, and which is really supporting what already Scott mentioned for the new generation upcoming standards as well. So Scott, another question to you. Everybody is really asking this to me. Those who already knew that I'm gonna make moderation today for this session. So they still comment. I know some people still comment that standards can be barriers against agility, because when we talk about resilience, when we talk about how fast everything is changing now, we know agility, and you already mentioned, is quite important. Do you think that standards are really barriers against agility, or what is your comments, please?
Well, I said earlier, Özlem, that I see standards as knowledge, but I know that across our industries, and indeed in many parts of government and society, traditionally there's been the idea that standards are some sort of red tape or regulation or blue tape or something to doing something, and that's just not the right mindset, because the standards we are talking about are a business enabler. And if you think of standards as purely a technical compliance type of quasi-regulation, then the chief executives, the C-suite, as we call them, are not very interested in that. That becomes a very boring problem. But we know that from the econometric analysis, when you see standards as a strategic advantage for your company, you will be more successful. You will have higher levels of productivity. You will be more competitive. Fundamentally, standards, the consensus standards we're talking about, have been written by industry for industry. Why would industry experts write standards that slowed them down? They write standards that will accelerate their business because that's their job. Their job is to write standards to get advantage in the marketplace, not to slow themselves down. So if people in companies are still thinking that standards are there to stop them doing something, they simply don't understand what standards are all about. Standards are not a level playing field. That's what the law brings. Standards are deliberately about creating competitive advantage for businesses that use them. But why would standards makers make life more difficult? They write standards to help their industries be more successful. And Kumazawa-san is an excellent example of that.
Exactly. Well, actually, this is not my thoughts, by the way, I must say. I told some people, but that was a perfect answer. Thank you so much. I totally agree with you. Maybe just in the beginning, just to establish some, to be more agile, you should definitely have a good governance in place, first of all, right? Maybe if they just get stuck in this governance only, and they don't use standards being as an enabler, this could be a big concern for them. So wrong usage, wrong interpretation of the standards.
Yeah, it's a very old-fashioned mindset. It's a very old-fashioned mindset that anything that's written is there to make your life more difficult. Very old-fashioned. You want to see standards as knowledge of best practice, and you want to use them. It's not about meeting standards, it's about using them to advantage. So it's a very, very exciting time. And I think that the role of international standards, business standards adopted in our countries, used by leading industry, its time has come. This is where we come together as a business community and we say, this is how we can help the world, how we can help our company, how help our people, and this is our contribution to a post-pandemic global recovery.
Perfect, thank you. So, Mr. Şahin, do you experience this in the way you assess certified companies? Do you see some companies are still using only that part of the standards, but they really don't use them as being an enabler, something that can support their agility? Adem Bey? Adem Bey, beni duyabiliyor musunuz? Tercüme geliyor mu size?
Biraz takip etmekte zorlandım. Bana
I
herhalde,
have had some difficulty in following. I think I have a connection problem, so I'm sorry. I think this question was directed to me.
Evet.
Well,
All
yes,
right.
well, shall I repeat?
Esasında standartların
Well,
kolay ve çabuk
actually,
hareket etmeyi yavaşlattığını söylemek çok
we
büyük bir yanlış olur.
can say that the
Çünkü
standards actually
eğer
slow down the
biz standartlara
agility in
bir
our
ortak dil
activities,
olarak
but this would
bakıyoruz.
be wrong because we consider
Şimdi
the standards
eğer
as a common language.
amacımız
And
rekabetse,
if our purpose is to
amacımız
increase our
dünyada ortak
competitiveness,
aynı
and if
dili
our goal is
kullanıyorsak
to create
veya
a common
amacımız
language in the
aynı
world
şeyi
in terms of
kullanıyorsak
our businesses, in
bizim
terms of our
standartlara
enterprises, and
kesinlikle
so on,
engel olarak icap
then
eder.
we have to comply
Sadece
with all the international
mesela
standards. This is a must for
sadece
all of
sanayi
us.
devretimin dışında başka bir alandan güncel bildirmek
For
istiyorum.
example, I would like to give an
Geçenlerdeki
updated example from any other area
ne
other
yapacağımızı
than
söylemek.
industrial production and manufacturing, the social services,
Başa
and the standards, the international standards that will be applied in this.
Biz
services
yakında bir İzmir
needs to
depremi
be
yaşadık.
flawless. For example, we have experienced an earthquake in Izmir province in last month. It's quite recent, and the search and rescue teams, they need international standards in order to rescue people from the ruins of the buildings. If we wouldn't have any international standards to comply with in these areas, then the success rate of search and rescue would not be that successful. Therefore, this is the example that is also valid for any kind of industries. If we do not apply, if we do not take the international experience that belongs to the globe overall, if we do not take them and apply them in our own segments of business, then we wouldn't have success. Therefore, we should not consider the international standards as the factors to slow down our businesses and processes. This is what I think.
Well, was a good example, really. I mean, thank you so much. And those are the disasters that we should be really very quick and fast. And as you said, international standards are always helping to shape us. So, Kumazawa-san, do you think Panasonic Life Solutions is agile? Do you think your company is resilient? And how do you measure it?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And maybe we try to be agile, but always customer is going to decide we are agile or not, So it is quite difficult for me to judge myself we are agile or not. But actually, I agree with Scott-san and Adem-san that this standard is knowledge, and also this is a common language. So this is our responsibilities, and also it's our opportunities that we follow the standards to secure our business itself. Panasonic itself, maybe it's a huge organization, so customer will say always you are very slow, or something like this. But this is not due to the standards, because on top of the standards, we have Panasonic Corporation's quality system. So of course we will follow the standards, but because of our product concept is safety and security and comfortable. So this is our product concept. So on top of the standards, how we are going to achieve those concepts? We have own Panasonic standards. So in order to achieve our Panasonic standards, sometimes we are not agile enough, maybe, but it is, I think, it's durable. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for this open answer. And I agree, in such big organizations, I mean, agility is not a definition only. And we know, maybe Scott will also agree with me, we know there is no definition of being resilient or not resilient. This is all about being more resilient or less resilient, more agile or less agile, right? So depending on the situation, depending on your organization, right, Scott?
I'm sure that's true. I think it's also important to recognize that great international companies like Panasonic do have very advanced systems to support their production and their quality of work. But there are many thousands, indeed millions, of small companies in our countries that maybe in the supply chain or who don't have that history of high quality activity, and who can benefit a lot from using the standards to get into a supply chain, to do more exporting and innovation, to see what good looks like as they grow and as they become more successful. So in many ways, I think that the leading corporations, the leading companies, are already very good examples of what good practice is all about. And often the role of international standards used as a common language, as Dr. ŞAHİN said, a common language, provides a base for many of the middle type of companies, or the SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises to step up and improve their performance, and then they can join the global supply chain along with the great leaders.
Perfect.
So
Totally
the standards
agree.
are
I
an
mean,
easy way. The standards are an easy way for them to get access to the knowledge.
to the knowledge and to align for big companies to align their supply chain to their level of knowledge and implementation.
We know
right?
that
Maturity.
big companies specify standards in their supply chain in order to help improve the quality of the suppliers of the smaller SMEs that are working in their supply. They can specify standards to do that, and that's a very, very effective way of improving the quality of production in the long supply chain.
Exactly, I agree. So, well, I mean, having said that, supply chain and supply chains are always the synergy that we just spread out from our companies, and then it becomes a bigger picture in the world. So when we look into the bigger picture, being as an environmental engineer originally, I must ask about sustainability as well. So how do you consider sustainability, Scott, in ISO when you develop new standards? Where is sustainability positioned?
Well, I think that in the business standards we're talking about, consideration of the three pillars of sustainable development is becoming routine. It's becoming embedded in our committees and in our work. I was talking with one of our chairs only yesterday, who's chair of our strategic committee on these standards. So the economic side we've discussed efficiency and anti-bribery and so on. The social side we've discussed, so communities and countries improving the health and well-being of their citizens, so standards to support social welfare, healthcare, inclusion, diversity, accessibility, and of course the environmental side also vital. Greenhouse gas emissions, we have whole suites of standards on carbon emissions, responsible consumption, circular economy, and all of these areas. So there are standards addressing specific subjects, and also the committees considering the ESG performance within their standards process. But we haven't touched on that I wanted to flag is sustainable finance, because I think that as I sit here in the UK and you are there in Turkey and we're talking about global challenges, the question of sustainable finance is becoming ever more important. Investors are looking to ask companies what is their sustainability credentials, what are their measures, can they invest in these companies? So we were very pleased in the UK to secure the secretariat of the new ISO Committee on Sustainable Finance, which is called TC322. And they're going to produce a new standard, 32,210, which is a framework for sustainable finance. And that's really exciting, because if we can achieve a common standard, a common understanding, a common language, as Dr. Adem has said, common language on sustainable finance, we can really encourage change towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And we've been developing 3 new fast-track PAS standards to support that international work. The first already published this year in collaboration with the financial services industry and our government. That's a framework for organizations. And then the second one is on the specification for managers, for investment managers. And the third one will be about products. So I think that as we move into the financial industries and we can bring the whole catalogue, if you like, of standards to support the whole of business enterprise, we can really do a lot more to support the UN Sustainable Development Goals and sustainability generally.
Exactly. Actually, I mean, when we talk about being resilient, we cannot think this without any healthy world, right, around us. So I totally agree. And if we just base this on the financials, then I'm sure it can be handled. It can be handled much more seriously and quickly. So, Mr. Şahin, where we are in Turkey about sustainability, how do Turkish companies consider sustainability? Adem Bey?
Şimdi Sayın Scott ISO'daki çalışmaları çok yakından bildikleri için
Well, since
şimdi
Mr. Stidman knows the efforts and the studies in ISO very closely, I can only, tell you
üzerine
the things that I've been following
öncelik
from the
yani bizim
international news.
kullandığımız ve duymaya alıştığımız standartların dışında
So,
başka
apart from
alanlarda
the standards that we are accustomed to hearing, ISO is also studying in their in many other standards other than the ones that we know or that we are used to seeing.
benzeri fiziksel varlıkların sürdürülebilirliğinden bahsedebiliriz. Tabii
We
biz
can
burada
talk about
organizasyonel
sustainability in these works.
eğer organizasyonel sistemi oluşturan unsurlar krizlere
The
karşı
connection
standartlarla
is also
güvence
breaking.
organizasyonların sürdürülebilirliği ve dayanıklılığı artmaktadır. Birkaç
If
yönetim
the
sistemi
organizations are secured with international standards, then their agility and their resilience can be
ki
sustainable.
organizasyonel sistem girdi süreç, çıktı kaynak, veri
The
bildirim ve
inputs,
yönetim
the outputs, the feedbacks, and the managerial organization systems need to be kept alive and they need to be active. And international standards and their application means a guarantee for this kind of factors, the inputs, the outputs, the feedbacks, and so on.
Birbirlerine sürdürülebilirliği garanti edecek bir beyanda bulunmak istiyorlarsa
If the companies, for example, want to
uyguladıklarını ve hayata geçirdiklerini
want to compete or at least communicate with one another in the international community, they need to apply common international standards. So the international standards are also some means of keeping up communication and the competition and the cooperation between companies in different locations.
ama köklü bir yönetim sistemi olarak aldığınız zaman bir
When you take this, when you consider this as a whole means of management systems, then you can see holistically about how these standards are important to be applied in the companies.
bu standartlardan haberdar etmeye
And this
ve
is
bunlara uymaya
the only way that the national and international companies can become the parts of the same supply chain. This is the only way to apply international standards.
Exactly. Thank you so much. And now I must say the same. I must ask the same question. Kumazawa-san, please. What do you do about sustainability in your company? How do you handle sustainability in your company?
Sustainability. Maybe I think it's going to be related to the new standards that the Scott-san mentioned for the people. For the Panasonic, we have a very important sentences for all employees. Of course, we are the manufacturers, but our philosophy is people before products. So our founder, Konosuke Matsushita, mentions that we are educating the people and we are producing the products. So always people comes first. This is our company cultures. So in order to achieve our sustainability, the people is coming at the first place for us. So from this point of view also, that the new standards is quite interesting to me. And also, of course, after we have approached to business to human, that we have, of course, doing lots of CSR activities. So this, by using our technology, for example, we have solar panels. Using the solar panels, we have made some solar lantern, small lamp, and we are donating to all the the African countries. And then also through this kind of the activities that we try to contribute to the societies, and then people understand about the meaning of Panasonic itself. So this is going to help for our sustainability itself. Then after that, as I mentioned, as a product concept, that safety, security, comfortable, this product will support our sustainability. This is what we are thinking.
Okay. Wow, very good. Yes, as you mentioned again, I mean, sustainability is also pretty much linked with people. So we come back to people again. And very nice actions in Panasonic. Congratulations to you, Kumazawa-san. I really would like to continue with you because I would like to ask you now the technology part in the standards now. So we know Japan is leading technology in the world. So how do you imagine governance in the future? I mean, if you think about technology, how would be the governance in the future?
I think this is, I think it's a new trend is going to be for the standards of the technologies. This is what I'm also expecting. Now is a time the one company is not going to develop whole things. Before, back in the past, we collect all the engineers and we do from R&D and product development and the mass productions and customer service, everything from A to Z, one company is doing. However, now there's some keywords of the agile. So many company has so many good technologies, and as a matter of fact, when I also working here, so many company is coming. Hey, Kumazawa-san, I have this kind of technologies. I think this is going to be useful for your product or your solutions. They are coming to me. But actually, I don't know this technology is good or not. So from this perspective, if there's some common language in terms of new technologies, this is going to help us because there are some experiences that we try to communicate with one company for one project with one new technologies. But after we go deep dive, that this technology is not actually, practical. They are exaggerating. This is good and so on. So that's why if we can have some common language for the new technologies, it will help us for the new solutions. So this is going to help us for the agile development. So this is what I'm expecting.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Very good. Now I'm gonna ask the same question to Mr. ŞAHİN as well. Mr. ŞAHİN, where are we in this journey? I mean, using technologies in the standards world. So how, I mean, we heard about Kumazawa-san. It doesn't mean that all technologies are fine. All technologies are perfect for us. So where we are in this journey in Turkey?
Biz tabii Türkiye'de bu yolculukta dünyadan farklı bir yerde değiliz.
Well, in Turkey, we are not in a different place than the rest of the world.
Üzerinde durduğumuz konular yani böyle
The topics that we constantly emphasize are the digitalization, for example, the global warming, the climate change, the industry 5.0 or 5G, and so on. So we understand that in the near future,
standardına veya bunların etkilediği alanların
we will need some new definitions of the areas that the factors that we have so far counted will affect.
Standart geliştirme aşamasında olduğunu biliyorum.
And we know that the international standards are being developed about these issues for the time being, and about cybersecurity or the cyber vulnerabilities are of great importance in the world, and some standards are being developed to tackle with these issues as well.
Söyleyebiliriz.
So we can definitely say that new standards will come into effect, and they will be usable in our industries, so to say, in our lives in general, in very close future.
Teknolojiyi yakından takip eden, belli alanlarda teknolojiyi yakından takip eden
And in some
yenilikçi
specific areas that follow the latest technology in the world, some innovative endeavors
biz Türk
are
Standartları Enstitüsü
required to be
dünyada
implemented in order to keep up with the pace of the technology in the world. As the TSE,
çalışmalarda yer almaya
we are
bir şekilde
willing to take part in any kind of activity that will adapt and that will innovate our existing areas to the new and changing technologies in the world.
dahil olmaya hem de farkında olmadan
And we
takip
are
etmekten
doing our best to
çalışıyoruz.
follow up, and if possible, to be a part of the technical activities and to follow up the recent developments in the world.
Brilliant, yes. I know even in Turkey, smart cities are also all in discussion. So everybody, everywhere, technology is everywhere now, and standardization need is also everywhere. Thank you, Mr. Şahin. So Scott, I mean, now we know that we know that technology is everywhere, and technology brings some cyber security risks, information security risks. Apart from all these standards, I would like to ask you how we will gonna really adopt the requirement of handling the big data, artificial intelligence in the standards. Is there any new standards coming where the implementers will see that there will be some mandatory clauses about looking to the big data, using the artificial intelligence, how well they are good in adopting the technology in their processes? How will the future look like in that perspective, please?
This is a very good question, Özlem, and it's a whole new industrial revolution, this one, a world revolution. So we have to be very careful here to respect the different nations' approach to the regulation, data security and privacy, and movements of digital information around the world across border is a very, very complicated area. So GDPR regulations and those types of regulation in different countries, I believe there are already 6 or 7 different types of GDPR regulation in the United States and across Europe, of course. So this question of the regulation controlling the movement of data across borders and what is possible in some countries, not in other countries, is going to be a very big problem for manufacturers who are selling global products, which include and rely on data and data transfer. Then there's the software dimension and the rapidity of software development and the evolution of systems, the great providers we all know in that space is a further complication. So there's very interesting work going on the ethics of artificial intelligence, which needs to be stakeholder led. We need a consensus on what is ethically allowable, whether it's in autonomous vehicles or in the workplace, in the use of data, data from your customers, data from your employees, data from other sensors, from the Internet of Things. So there's a lot of work happening, not just in the technical areas, where deep in what they call the technology stack, technology experts are working on those interoperability standards to support new innovation, but also in this area of the interface between the use of data, as you say, the use of the data and the public, consumers and governments to trying to protect them. So there's a whole spectrum of work to be done in that area, and we have strategic committees in BSI looking at particularly the ethics of the use of data. And how that might work, and big companies participating in that work, which is very helpful. Against that backdrop, I would also say that in ISO, and certainly also in BSI, we are foreseeing that many standards will soon become machine interpretable. We already have machine readable standards, that's called PDF, but actually machine interpretable standards is a whole new concept. And this will enormously unlock the possibility for manufacturers to embed in their workflow the standards that they need in a completely seamless way. Now, this is really exciting, Özlem, and I would welcome Kumazawa-san's view on this, because historically standards have been developed and used or consumed, we say, in a very linear fashion. It takes a long time. So experts develop a standard, they write it, they publish it, the company has to find it, then the company has to understand it and implement it and use it, and it takes a long time. But when standards become smart, and ISO is launching a smart standards project, smart means standards that are machine applicable, readable, and inferable, then the smart standards will be simply like an app. They'll be coded into your workflow in the manufacturer and in the supply chain. And then they can be constantly updated, and they'll be working 24/7 and monitoring and managing the workflow in the organization. So with drones and remote auditing and all of that technology, immersive technologies, we see huge changes in the future audit environment, and moving to a much more digitally enabled environment, less need to send humans into other environments because it'll be done digitally. So I think that this continuous cycle for the next generation of standards, Özlem, the next generation will be all about smart standards that are continuously embedded like apps in your workflow. Very exciting times.
Wow, it is. It is really. Thank you, Scott. I mean, definitely, it's really exciting. Well, I think our time is over. I was able to cover all the topics which I really would like to ask to you. Thank you so much again for being us today. That was a brilliant session, I believe. We started to describe what resilience is meaning, but then now we start to talk about all these revolution in the standards world, where we just not only talking about products and processes anymore, but people in the center now, with all these values and ethics and everything. And finally, some very, very really exciting information about new standards, new smart standards, which is now much more adaptable with the technologies. Scott, thank you so much again being with us today in your very, very early time in UK. Really, I appreciate. Mr. Şahin, thank you so much. I know you were so busy, like Kumazawa-san. You all were busy, but you just spent a lot of time with us, and that was a very, very informative session for me, and I hope for our audiences as well. Thank you so much again. And this is the end of our session, so please keep watching Quality Congress.